Hey guys, tightrope here, and here's a look at the rest of the stuff from the Emerald Bear patch. I know this came out about 11 days ago now, but hey, you know, good things take time. I've been working hard on this, a lot of stuff covered in this video, including the hotfix changes to the ASC, so you'll be able to see how they perform after the most recent nerfs. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. Catch you in the next one. The auto reverse range has changed from 60 down to 40. 40 is what it was in Company of Heroes 2, so I think that makes a lot of sense. And 60, it got changed to 60 at some point during the course of Code 3. It wasn't 60 at launch. And 60 is so long, you know, it's the entire range on a tank gun and at the default zoom level. It's basically the entire width of your screen. So yeah, basically what this does is determines, you know, if you right click behind your unit, will it turn around or will it reverse? So here's 40 range. One slightly shorter than that. You can see the tank will just start driving there backwards, whereas if we go slightly further than that, it will try and turn around and drive their head on. So yeah, I think this is a very good change. You know, we got to that value of 40 in Company of Heroes 2, I think, for like a reason. So I think it makes sense to go back to that amount. It just seems to be a sensible amount. And hopefully this should stop some issues where you drive into combat in reverse as well, combined with that forward-facing change. But it still gives you some leeway for units like the LG 40, which, you know, don't have the reverse command as an option. So you can give them some like short commands, right clicks behind them, so they're still facing the right direction so they can set up and fire at an enemy tank. Whereas otherwise, you know, they'll spin around. And you know that now they're facing the wrong direction. During the spinning around animation, it's slower. They're slower to get away. So having that buffer of 40 range does help things out a lot in some niche cases, like with the LG40 and the Recon in Code 2. The ambush bonus for firing coming out of camouflage has been standardized to 40% accuracy and 25% damage. In Code 2, there was quite a lot of variance in this. Some units got no ambush bonus, some 25% accuracy, some 50% accuracy. None of them with increased damage though. And I was predicting that, you know, the 25% increased damage will be most impactful on anti-tank units that also have camouflage. There's not too many of those in Company of Heroes 3 at the moment. I think just the Jaegers with their Vet 1, they get camouflage. You can see it mentions there increased damage and accuracy. And Panzer Jaegers and regular Jaegers. But it doesn't seem to be working. You can see like a normal Panzer Jaeger will shoot from out of camouflage. That does 50 damage. And firing out of camouflage. Also 50 damage. So then I was like, oh, well, maybe you just have to take it off, hold fire. Good job, safety's off. Auto attack. Holding fire. But no, still 50 damage. And same thing with the Panzer Shrek. Does the exact same normal 160 damage. So maybe this is bugged for AT weapons, or I don't know, it didn't mention in the notes that it was excluding AT weaponry. So now we have a full squad of Jaegers shooting. Let's see how this works. Got to right click. Bonus shows up. And yeah, it does 200 damage. So in this case, it does do the extra damage if you have multiple units. But if you go off hold fire, the Shrek will fire first. And then that only does 160 damage. So yeah, you got to right click coming out basically if you want to get the full benefit of this. Don't take hold fire off. Doesn't seem to work. Right click your target, and you need to have more than one model or more than just the AT weapons in your squad, and then it will work. So the Kanone and the BL 5.5 both got a cooldown reduction from 60 to 45 seconds. I think the Kanone probably needed it. Wasn't really seeing much play, isn't very good. But the BL 5.5 was seeing a lot of play, so I'm a little bit surprised to see that. Though the extra shells from the artillery saturation did get removed from the BL 5.5's vet ability. The precision shot used to shoot 3 shots, I think. Yep, the saturation and the BL 5.5 vet. But it looks like you can still build these in your base sector. That is disappointing. This has been reported as a bug. Essentially making these howitzers, you know, immune to off-map artillery strikes. So they really need to sort that out first off. So I just want to double check that the precision shot is indeed only going to fire 1 shot. Yep. And then that had a 55-second cooldown. Did I see that right?
105 team receiving 105 barrage. Obiettivo confermato.
45 seconds for this. Let's check the West, but it didn't mention that it got a change. Let's see. 45 for that. And then with the creeping barrage on the West Bay. That has 65 seconds. I mean, this ability is already not that appealing, and if it's going to have a near 20-second longer cooldown, I think they need to have a look at this again, because these numbers are all over the show. So now apparently out of combat bonuses such as passive healing won't work on retreat. Same story with squad-based timed abilities such as sprint, or maybe even like received accuracy bonuses. I'm not sure. But to try this out, what we're going to do is we're going to pop sprint and the captain's flanking maneuver on this squad as they're retreating, and the squad's just going to be vanilla. We're going to have a retreat race over to there. Let's see what happens.
Make a move.
Ready for deployment.
Counting on you.
All right, fellas, we're falling back.
Well, this squad is definitely retreating much faster. Don't know if that's from the sprint ability or from the captain. We'll have to test that out separately now.
Go! All right, by the book. Let's fall back.
Okay, so it looks like it's not the sprint, it's the captain's ability that is still breaking this functionality. Still allows retreating units to retreat faster than normal. I did plan to do a whole segment on T-weapons here, comparing their setup and aim to fire times against Company Heroes 2 and like their arcs and whatever, but all the testing involved in that just completely blew the time budget, so I just can't include it in this video, unfortunately. But you know, look forward to that in the future, comparing team weapons, Code 2 versus Code 3. So the LMG Pack Howie and Heavy Mortar have all got a cooldown reduction on their barrage. Let's just double check that those are working as intended. 20 seconds.
Howitzer, firing on your mark.
Seconds.
Engaging new target. Hold.
Yep, 20 seconds on all of them. Regular mortar has 30 seconds. So these are now faster than a regular mortar. Like, these units have seen, I'd say, very, very little play except for the heavy mortar. But I think that's partially because it's got Recon Flare and the Airburst Barrage, which are both very good. And it comes with the truck, making it very, very good for team games. Whereas these two, not as much. So I think this is probably fair that they get a bit of a cooldown reduction. And the thing with mortar, if it wants to like change angles and barrage, it just like spins on the spot and can fire, whereas these other units have to pack up, spin around, set back up, and then fire. So if you ever have to target outside of the arc, a lot more cumbersome, and perhaps the faster cooldown on their barrage kind of makes up for that. So I just wanted to test the Airburst Barrage, see if that also got the bonus, or if it was just the high explosive. Oh, that got the bonus, and we got a 10% bonus, I think, at Vet 1 as well, which is why it showed 18 seconds there. So it looks like this also applies to the Airburst, unlike a lot of the Howitzer barrages we saw earlier. Having a look at the projectile changes now, you see you can no longer shoot through buildings with anti-tank guns like you used to be able to last patch. And having a look at this, like if we try to use the Flak long range, shooting above this wall, you see it does shoot above the wall. But if we try to go for like a shorter one, lower angle. Now some of them connecting with the wall, some of them getting over the top. looks like basically all of those connecting with the wall. But there are some cute, confusing things about this. You can see the AT gun here. Definitely barrel below the wall. Very low to the ground compared to most vehicle guns. But if I shoot through it, you can see the projectile's still going through it. However, if I shoot through it and then see there's this other fence here. Connects with the light cover one. Which is kind of interesting. It's a little bit weird. So then I was like, okay, well, what happens if I do like a one from back here? Now this one's connecting with the wall. What about one from over here? Those ones are going through, but if I go for like a shallow one, it connects with the wall. So I don't know, I feel like there's some kind of trickery going on with AT guns, where maybe if it happens like within the first like 15 range, or maybe like as a percentage, maybe it's like the first 50%, they won't collide with these walls or something. So yeah, there's some trickery going on, because if it was truly a 3D projectile like they were saying, like, it's definitely lower than that wall. What do you guys think about it, basically? I don't know what's going on with the projectiles entirely, but it seems like AT guns can maybe still shoot through walls a little bit. The Recon Loiter and Airborne Battle Group, we're going to be testing that out since it's got a extra health now. Roughly 2 times the health of a regular plane. I think regular planes have 280 health, and this has got 480 now, so see how it goes. We've got a flak over here. See how long it takes to shoot it down. I believe the Wehrmacht took about 30 seconds to shoot down the Recon RD plane. And this took about 20 seconds to shoot down with the flak. This is just on regular mode. I didn't activate AA mode. I don't think that changed anything. It just changes priority targets. Now I'll be reading through the notes because there are quite a few things here that don't warrant a demonstration, such as snipers build time being decreased by 10 seconds. I think snipers probably needed a slight target size decrease, maybe down to like 1.3-ish. I think they're at 1.5 at the moment. They just die a little bit too fast after all those nerfs that they got with their vision in the last patch. But you know, it's a step in the right direction. US forces have been powerful in 1v1, weak in larger team modes. Changes will be toning down the Easy 8 while improving underperforming units like elite infantry and support units. So we've got the 4x4 truck, increased lethality for mid to far range by 10%. This is a bit of a curious one because this was already used in about 50% of like high level US forces 1v1s. So it just got 10% better here, and it also got a speed buff. I think before it was about 7.5 top speed, and now it's I think like 9.5. So the truck just got way better for some reason, even though it was already used in 1v1 about 50% of the time, I'd say, in those high level tournament games. Curious choice to buff. Of course, we know these air support center buffs a bit of a disaster. Adding in the Hotfix 1.2.2 patch changes just to this section, since it's mainly focused on the air support center. So the damage per shot has been reduced from 30 to 20. 2-second delay added. Area of effect can no longer miss in circumstances. That's strange. The rate of fire also reduced by, 20%? So quite a lot less damage overall. On top of that, a munitions cost increased by 10. And now the cost reduction bonuses you get from upgrading, it's been changed from 33% to minus 20 munitions flat. And the cooldown bonus from minus 50% to minus 30 seconds flat. Air Support Center P47 post 1.2.2 hotfix. Let's see how it does. Similar test to before. It's a line of infantry and team weapons.
P47 ready to ruin Jerry's day. Straight for target, dead ahead.
So with no dodging whatsoever, doesn't quite wipe a machine gun or an AT gun. This is gun shield facing forwards as well. But the model that didn't get targeted. so much. Maybe it's the gun shed, I'm not sure. Either way, still looks pretty lethal with the double sortie, but you can definitely feel the enhanced delay. The bazooka team's reload and wind down have been adjusted for fire rate increase. So about 0.5 a second on the short side and 0.75 a second on the long side on the reload. So faster rate of fire and 5 more health. Welcome. I had a go with bazookas the other day, post-patch, and they still feel a little bit awkward when they're starting up firing, kind of similar to Shreks nowadays as well. Yeah, aim times seem to be quite long. So oftentimes, you're kind of like at almost max range against the tank and you just can't quite get those shots off. It does make it a bit awkward using them sometimes, but, back the other way, it makes them easier to cut with vehicles. I suppose it depends on what you think is appropriate. But yeah, bazookas definitely need something. Now the secret weapon, I think, for bazookas is getting them to Vet 1 and their phosphorus rocket. That thing is a monster. So strong. So, yeah, go for that. Go for the phosphorus. It's really good. That was one of the nastiest phosphorus rockets you ever see, dude. Holy shit. He's killed his whole everything. Captain now gains shared veterancy, sure, and the off-map mortar barrage can now be used when suppressed. Patch notes mention the captain's barrage can now be used while he's suppressed, so by default his range is out to 50 with it. Let's see how that changes when some suppression kicks in. Okay, so it decreases. Now that's 10, 20, 35-ish, slightly under 35. So probably gets like a 33% range penalty when suppressed, similar to I think most grenades. Engineer health increased from 80 to 85. This change does not impact health when upgraded to assault engineers. I tried a few builds, like a few off-meta strats when I played US Forces involving 2 squads of engineers, and I don't think I really noticed the health buff, but maybe, maybe it was making an impact. It didn't feel like a complete liability. M1919 machine gun, manpower cost reduction from 240 to 220. Understandable, it's definitely underperforming to a few of the other machine guns, so now it's going to be cheaper. I actually tried out some build orders, like I was saying. I think my build was building the support center, building an engineer, and then you could build a machine gun straight away with this cost reduction. So it does, the manpower timings do link up quite nicely for it at 220 manpower. The Weasel machine gun no longer targets aircraft. Fair enough. The M3 75mm gun motor carriage direct fire range increased from 45 to 50, so I think this brings it on par with the Marder now, for instance, which I think it is pretty similar in terms of role. And I imagine this will also be quite a lot better now with the gun articulation changes. Haven't got a chance to try this one out yet, but I definitely will be trying out the 75mm because before this, yeah, it was not so good. The M4A1 76mm conversion upgrade is getting a 10 fuel cost reduction. Probably okay. This definitely fell off a lot after its AoE got nerfed, so it's probably fine. The M4A3 Sherman Bulldozer Bunker Buster deals plus 100% bonus damage to emplacement. Thought it already had this, or maybe it's just plus 100% to buildings, not emplacements. So I think that's good. Frontal armor increased by a good chunk, actually, 240. That's actually a respectable amount of frontal armor. Can actually bounce quite a few medium shells if you're in the longer range, like Panzer IVs and stuff. Long range, up close, they're still point blank. They're still, I think it's 220 pin on the Panzer IV point blank, so it's still going to pin you most of the time. But I think longer range, they're like 140-ish. So yeah, you'll bounce a few. Population decreased from 14 to 12. Okay. Scatter angle decreased from 9 to 5. Wow, that's way better scatter. I wonder if that's more in line with like the Centaur. Similar change to what the Centaur got in the previous patch. And the scatter distance scatter ratio decreased from 1 to 0. Okay, so yeah, way better scatter on the Bulldozer now. Checking out the Bulldozer, see how its scatter goes, firing close to max range here. Guess we'll do it against this unit out in the open and see how it goes. Every single one of these shots is landing directly on the model it's targeting. That is quite impressive when it comes to scatter.
Heads up, we got the all clear.
Alright, now I'll try it against the unit that's clumped up. See how this goes.
The only good crowd.
Just with the right click. Seems to be bang on, man. Really low scatter. Every single shot is pretty much landing directly on whatever it's targeting with right click. That is actually quite impressive scatter. Like, you definitely see the Bulldozer being a force to be reckoned with now. And the Weapon Support Center got a cost decrease from 120 manpower and 15 fuel to 100 manpower and 10 fuel. I actually didn't even notice this change when I was playing this earlier, but maybe explains a few things, and definitely was the least used when it came to starting build orders, so probably a sensible change. Moving on to the Easy 8, I did cover this a little bit, but basically it's got the same AoE profile now as the 76mm Sherman. So yeah, pretty big nerf to its performance against infantry, but it's better than the 76mm Sherman. I think it's got better scatter, so it should hit in the infantry more often. It's also got better moving accuracy. I think the Easy 8's got 100% accuracy firing on the move. The 76mm I think is maybe 75, and way better penetration than the regular 76mm also on the Easy 8. So there's definitely still reasons to go for it, but it's not going to be monstering infantry like it used to. The Scott auto fire and barrage aim time decreased from 1 to 0.5, making it a little bit more responsive, and the fuel cost decreased from 50 to 45. I don't know, I felt like the Scott was always kind of viable. I'm not sure about this. I mean, I've played against somebody kind of spamming them. It was actually quite a challenge to deal with, you know, with just like the cooling aspect of things, not having to pay for tech. It was quite a handful to defend against. I imagine in the hands of a more skillful player, I would have been really up against it. So, I don't know. I don't feel the Scott needed that kind of change personally, but there it is. The SSF Commando's got a bazooka buff. In terms of rate of fire, now they will be 0.1 of a second faster in the best case scenario and 0.5 of a second faster in the worst case scenario. So it's a decent rate of fire buff. Not quite as good as the dedicated bazooka team got, but so the commandos weren't struggling as much as them either. I don't think the commandos have any special stats apart from rate of fire above the regular bazooka. I think they've got the exact same penetration, accuracy and whatnot. Whereas, you know, in Code 2, the elite bazookas did more damage, had some more pen. I don't think the SSF commandos have any stats like that. It's just more rate of fire. That's their advantage. Population decreased from 10 to 9, and the commandos got a health increase from 95 to 110. Brings them on par with a lot of other elites. And overall, these commandos felt actually very good when I played with them the other day on stream. The Wizzbang now gets more rockets per barrage, going from 10 to 15. I think generally this won't matter too much against most unit types. You will have dodged out before those last 5 rockets will come through. But, you know, against stationary targets like maybe the 88mm Flak, that will make a big difference, the extra 5 rockets. It's also got a range increase from 70 to 80. I think this is what everybody was hoping for. 10 more range. Now, I believe the 88 has 70 range, so now you will actually outrange the 88 with the Wizzbang. So that's now a viable counter to an 88 with Wizzbang. The rocket's mid-range distance, so got slightly better AoE. Mid-range AoE is improved, and the far damage multiplier has also been improved. So they're doing not too far off double the damage at the edge of the AoE circle compared to what they used to be. So that's a pretty big change. On top of that, rockets now deal 50% deflection damage. That could actually make them decently powerful against like the big boy tanks. Let's have a look at how the Wizzbang does against a Tiger going against the frontal armor. 15 rockets now and 50% deflection damage. See how it adds up. We're close to max range with this, about 70 range barrage. About a third of its health. So yeah, I mean the Tiger's a pretty big target, but we were doing this pretty long range. This could actually, you know, make that little bit of difference when it comes to, you know, if something's repairing, it's an already low health tank repairing somewhere, you're able to get in there, a Wizzbang. Obviously they'll dodge out before all 15 rockets land, but you know, if you just need extra 100-ish damage, the Wizzbang might be able to get the job done with that deflection damage. So now we're going to try the Wizzbang against some infantry and team weapons, pretty much at max range. I'm going to turn the fog on for this one as well, so we get a sense of the scatter. This is probably a more realistic scenario as you'll help be using it. So I think by now most units would have got out of the zone. Respectable results though. And you know, those extra rockets, if you do manage to decrew the team weapon, say if it was already on low before the Wizzbang started barraging, the extra rockets will then continue to destroy the decrewed weapons, which could be to your advantage as well. So the extra rockets, you know, they've got extra purposes beyond just actually damaging what you intend them to damage. Carpet bombing run now drops 2 additional bombs per bomber, and bombs dropped off in the reticule correctly. I didn't even notice that they got buffed when I didn't remember this when I was testing the off maps in the other video, so that's interesting. But yeah, carpet bombing a little bit stronger. The delay on it's still very, very long though. It makes it easy to dodge. HMG Paradrop, cost reduced from 240 to 220. Recharge time from 30 to 75 seconds. I thought it specifically said this did not impact the Paradrop. Does not affect the airborne variant, but it's got the exact same change. Okay, well, there we go. Anyway, longer recharge, so I think this was affecting kind of team games. Players would spam about 3 of these, drop them into annoying buildings right at the center of the map, and then it would be very difficult to, or even very aggressive positions, and be tough to break past them. 1 every 75 seconds going to give you more opportunity to flank them and whatnot. The P47 Rocket strafe, damage to buildings reduced by 75%. Damage against infantry also reduced by 75%. Delay before the second plane attacks increased, and the rocket count has been decreased. So this will make them far less lethal against every non-vehicle target and against vehicles as well, quite a bit weaker. Let's see how these revised P47 rockets do against a few different targets, starting out with the Tiger. I remember seeing these in the past would absolutely annihilate the Tiger, pretty much with one pass. So obviously see the tracking bug. I think I targeted them kind of like this. Try them against the pack next.
99 fighters here. It's sweat time. Straight inbound.
I mean, it's still pretty respectable damage against the pack. Like if you know, if it's already a little bit low, you get slightly better scatter than this with the rockets. Could help contribute with a kill. This against a spread out squad of grenadiers now. Yeah, I mean that was pretty rubbish. Like a very spread out squad. Not so good. Team weapon, you know, they're all clumped up around the weapon. That was a lot better. And finally we'll do this on the Panzer IV.
P47 ready to ruin Jerry's day. Red tails, ripping them up.
Pretty much bang on to kill a full health Panzer IV with these rockets if they both planes land. Yeah, I mean it's respectable. Paratroopers cooked frag grenade fuse time decreased from 1.6 to 1. So yeah, previously he had the exact same fuse time as like the Riflemen's grenade, so it wasn't cooked at all. So it's kind of a bug, but now it is. I believe in Code 2, cooking a grenade reduces its fuse by 0.5. So slightly more of an impact from the cooked grenade on the paratroopers will make it difficult to dodge, but it's quite weak. In terms of AoE stats, this is actually even worse than the Rifleman grenade. It's got like worse mid-range damage and stuff. So it's not like oppressively powerful. Whereas in Company of Heroes 2, I believe the Paratrooper grenade had the exact same stats as the Rifleman grenade, but just with the faster fuse time. That is not the case in Company of Heroes 3 though. Bazooka reload and wind down adjusted, so they got the same reload rate as the SSF Commandos. The carbine short range lethality increased by 8%. The M1919 LMG mid to far lethality increased by 15%, and the population cost gone down from 10 to 9, similar to the SSF Commandos. So it's giving them a more overall firepower. Having a look at the DPS curves comparing Riflemen to Paratroopers on the excellent site co3stats.com, and here you can fill out the full squad's DPS loadout. Makes it really easy to do these comparisons. So you can see the Riflemen here, they've got the Thompson, Garand, 2 bars, compared to Carbines 2 1919s on the Paris. So you can see overall, like, it used to be a much wider gap up close. That's where the near range buffs to the Carbines have kind of closed this gap up between the two. The crossover point now is around 18, 19 range, whereas I think previously it was maybe somewhere in the 25 to 30 range was the crossover point before this patch. So the Paratroopers really only had like a small window, like an absolute long range where they were better than the double bar rifleman, but now that has been stretched with these buffs to the Paratroopers. So now they actually do serve a role. They have a purpose. Their long range firepower is much superior. But if we turn on moving, you can see the double bar riflemen are superior at every range. And that is because the M1919s on the Paras cannot be fired on the move, unlike in Company of Heroes 2. And I think the SSF Commandos can fire their M1919s on the move, not the Paras though. So the Paras are significantly weaker while stationary. And, you know, run and gun is very popular in Company of Heroes 3. So having very strong run and gun on the double bar rifleman makes them very strong. But, you know, at least this serves a purpose now. The Paratroopers, they've got some good long range performance, good stationary performance. They've got extra health over the rifleman. Don't require investment into them to get those upgrades. So it opens up some more build opportunities. And the supply drop has had its cost decreased from 150 to 125 manpower. I think this is a good idea. It didn't really see any play after that that kind of loiter that reinforced all these stuff for free got nerfed. After that point, you know, you could kind of like go for the supply drop to get munitions, then activate their ability to get the manpower back and boost up your manpower. But yeah, after that got nerfed, nobody was using supply drop anymore, so now it's cheaper. Moving on to Wehrmacht, they have been overperforming, and these changes are meant to tone down overall performance to promote a more diverse gameplay style, I guess. Some units that have been underused have been improved. Noble goals. So starting out with the 221, machine gun mid to far lethality increased by 10%. Sight increased from 35 to 45. So yeah, I think it's, you know, fair enough. More sight range on it. Had a look at what these numbers actually are for this, which you can do sometimes, because here in the mod tools on the right are like the single player values. This is what the game would have launched with and what will be used in the campaign. And on the left we have the multiplayer values. You can see ever so slightly less than 10% mid-range, but more like 15% long range for increases in accuracy. So this does make the 221 quite a lot more appealing. I think one issue with 221 rather is its low penetration on its gun. Very low pen. Actually have a look at that here. So 1 penetration at all ranges. So what I found was quite often, you know, you try and chase down things like the 4x4 or the dingo or whatever, and you just come off worse off because the penetration on this is so bad. So maybe that's something they could look at. They don't have to go crazy. They don't have to give it dingo penetration, but, you know, maybe like 1.2 far penetration, something like that would help out the 221 a little bit in the light vehicle battles, because its timing isn't that good. Luftwaffe company 10 fuel more than Panzergrenadier company. It ends up coming in quite late, even with the, I think it was a 5 fuel buff in the last patch. So maybe that's something they could look into, slight pin buff on the 221's gun. Checking out the 221 sight values, here it is by default out to 45 sight. And for comparison, the Co2 222 had 50 sight. So 5 less sight on the 221. So it's, not unprecedented. In fact, it's weaker than the Co-2 counterpart. Over here we've got the 221 at Vet 1. It gains a sight boost of Vet 1, which the 222 only gained a sight boost of Vet 2. And this is quite a big one as well. It goes out for about, I think, maybe 10 to 12 extra sight from Vet 1. So it's a pretty big power spike getting a sight like that. And here's the Vet 3 one, also gains some extra sight at Vet 3. And this takes it out to around 65 sight at Vet 3. Some people were complaining about these being too powerful with spotting scopes. So here we are, 100 range. We've got spotting scopes Vet 3. So it's 150, 60, 70, 72.5. So I think spotting scopes gives you another 7.5 sight in this case. Yeah, I mean, I think that's still way less. I think the Co-2 spotting scopes Vet 2 222 had 90. So it's certainly strong, but vetting this up to Vet 3 is going to be extremely difficult. So here we have the Dingo up against the 221 at various ranges. Long range will favour the 221. Close range should favour the Dingo because it will get a chance to flex its higher penetration values. The 221 does actually have pretty good frontal armour values compared to a lot of other light vehicles, which are maybe more like this 8 kind of armour range. On these lighter cars, it's even lower than that. But you can see, in a point-blank situation, very, very close fight. Long range.
We have lost the scout car.
Oh, mutually assured destruction there. Long range, more and more of an advantage for the 221 as it goes back. But yeah, I mean, the 221 does come in quite late, so I don't know. I think it could have a little bit more pin. The 2cm AA Flak gun team has had a manpower cost decrease from 320 to 280. I think this thing, can be pretty lethal if it gets a chance to sit down and fire, but the fact that it can't retreat can make it quite difficult to find opportunities to use it. But yeah, a slight cost decrease. It can be very strong when it gets going, but a hard to use unit. The Whirlwind, like most other forms of AA, is having a nerf to its anti-air performance from 50% bonus against air to negative 25%. Questionable decision, this one. And costs decreased from 360 manpower, 70 fuel to 320 manpower, 60 fuel. So 10 fuel faster will make it a lot more potent going for a Whirlwind Rush. Oftentimes, I played a lot of these Whirlwind Rush strategies. That last 10 fuel can be so painful. And, after all those nerfs to the Whirlwind's performance, it really wasn't stacking up. It just wasn't adding up or didn't make sense. So this is interesting. Instead of buffing its performance again, they're simply reducing the cost, making it easier to access. Grenadier MP40's submachine gun mid-range lethality decreased by 15%, and MP40 near lethality also decreased by 5%. MP40 Grenadiers, probably the most popular and dominant strategy in 1v1s during this time, so they are getting a pretty big nerf here. Having a look at the DPS curves of the MP40 Grenadiers compared to double bar Riflemen, and this is post-patch, and you can see technically the Grenadiers still have a slight edge up close, but only just, and then that tapers off in mid-range. Still quite competitive, even out to absolute max range. I've actually took a screenshot of this pre-patch, I come prepared. And here's how it used to look. Used to be quite a lot of separation there. Used to have a decent advantage. Changeover point used to be around 15 range, and that keep pace. But you see that is quite a different story now. MP40's significantly worse. But say the engagement wears on for quite a while. Now I've got 3 MP40 Grenadiers up against 3 Riflemen. In this case, they've got 2 bars, 1 Grand. Now you can see the MP40s do start to kind of stretch their legs in the close range, do pull a bit of a DPS advantage here now that you've kind of taken out the more worthless Kar 98 and the Thompson. But then, of course, they are horrendous. They have almost no long-range DPS when they're down to just the 3 submachine guns. The Marder is having its long-range accuracy decreased by 12%. Interesting change here. Not many people are going for the Marder as Wehrmacht, so it's okay. But I guess they're trying to keep the 2, the Wehrmacht and the DAC one, kind of the same, but of course the DAC one gets all those power-ups from upgrades, so never really going to be the same, but alright, well, you know, it's not the end of the world. The MG42 has a suppression against targets that are already suppressed decreased from 0.5 to 0.35, so this pretty much stops those pinned in one burst scenarios from happening, where, you know, out in the open, MG42 could just pin a squad in like less than a full burst. Crazy. So that won't be happening so much anymore, but it doesn't really change its other performance. In fact, it seems like they've buffed their suppression applied to other squads increased. So maybe this is like a slight AoE suppression buff. Not entirely sure what this means. So these weren't entirely the nerfs I was expecting for the MG42, but, you know, maybe some areas of the other Wehrmacht game have been nerfed, so maybe it pays not to over-nerf the MG42. We'll have to continue testing, see how it goes in the Master League this weekend. The Stug 3 is having its machine guns nerfed. Mid to far burst lengths are reduced by 15%, no longer targets aircraft, and far accuracy also decreased, so a lot less potent at long ranges against infantry now. Also, the Vet 1 ability on the Stug G, Point Blank Blast, reduced from 4 models to 3 models on their damage cap. The Luftwaffe Battle Group's Strafing Run is having its command point cost reduced by 1, and also its munitions cost by 25. I mean, you know, if you compare this to like the ASC strafes or most of the other strafes in the game, I think this one only has 1 pass instead of 2. Yeah, quite expensive. So I think that's probably fair compared to the other strafes at this stage, but, you know, it'll make this like a strong ability instead of something that you're like, okay, I have access to it, and it's good in this situation, so maybe I'll consider using it, but begrudgingly because it costs so much. Now it's actually quite appealing to use. But, you know, the Luftwaffe was already a very popular battle group, so a bit of a curious choice. On to the British forces. The training centre changes impacted the British forces more than anticipated. To adjust, some core units are gaining increased performance, and the training centre will now be available from the start. We are planning to continue to make further improvements to the British in the future. So 17 pounder range increased from 70 to 80, so now it has kind of an advantage over the 88, 10 range more, which I think is probably fair. It's definitely more cumbersome to use, easier to decrew, easier to kill off. So with a range, you know, it doesn't have the omnidirectional. You have to like set it up facing a direction with the cone, can just spin around 360 by itself. So more cumbersome to use. Now it's got a range advantage to compensate for that. The CMP truck, the 20mm AA gun cost reduced from 75 to 60 munitions. Really, this is only suitable as anti-air. So yeah, I still wouldn't recommend getting this against infantry or anything at all. Can't believe they still haven't buffed this, so maybe we'll see that in the next patch. The Dingo no longer targets aircraft with its machine gun. Sure. Footguard's bazooka reload and wind down adjusted for a rate of fire increase, same as what we saw from SSF commandos as US forces now, same rate of fire for the Footguards. Infantry sections, Bren weapon lethality increased by 4 to 6%, I guess this depends on what range it's operating at. Lethality at all ranges increased by 3%, I'm guessing this is on their rifle, though it doesn't specify that. And population decreased from 8 to 7. Sections, you know, did fall off with all their like vet reworks, all the center changes, training center changes and whatnot. They definitely did fall off quite sharply. So it'll be interesting to see how they go after all these changes. I actually did play against Inca Una. He went for like early training center infantry upgrade with quite a strong infantry base, and he just smashed me early on. So they definitely feel like stronger to fight against. The Forward Observer base howitzer fog of war scatter increased from 1.25 to 2.5, so firing into the fog of war is going to have way more scatter. But the ready aim time has been reduced, so the shells will come in faster, by about 1.5 seconds it looks like. The rotation rate has been increased, so if it has to spin to face the enemy, again it'll be much faster doing so. And also the scatter max has been decreased massively. So this is probably pretty much entirely offset this change from 15 to 6. Massive decrease in scatter here. So I believe this is like the artillery you can bring in with maybe like the Dingo and the Recce sections. Big buff to that. Testing out the Forward Observer Artillery Barrage. You can see that its activation range is actually slightly shorter than the Recce section's vision range. And the howitzer already roughly pointing in this direction. But it looks like it's a packed up state at the moment, so
We got orders, lads.
see how it goes.
This'll wake up those
I've run into range here.
Oh, this guy's soddy spread now.
Drop the artillery. This is maybe a situation like you'd use it in game.
They've got a fucking number. Clever bastards. Infantry taking losses here.
So I'm leaving this unit here to try and maintain sight for the scatter change.
We've lost communication with one of our squads.
But it's still quite a lot of scatter, this is 1v1 map. Pretty standard kind of range. Still a decent delay before it comes in, and the delay between shells is extremely long. Got about half health off the machine gun, and I had vision for most of that as well. So yeah, that was not very impressive. Help force units to move, but it's not going to be wiping stuff. Not very reliable. The M3 Stuart light tank, its self-repairability speed has been increased from 0.66 to 1.2, and the utility package is having a cost reduction from 60 to 40 munitions. So yeah, the utility package gives you the self-repair. I think this Stuart has 420 health, so yeah, this will make a big difference in terms of repair times. So we're going to have a bit of a repair race. Stuart, this one with the survival package, this one with some engineers repairing it. Let's see which one comes out on top. This one got maybe a 3-second head start here. So there we go. With that repair rate boost on this, faster than a whole squad of Royal Engineers. No sweeper upgrade. Faster than a whole squad of Royal Engineers. Which makes that quite appealing. Especially if you're trying to make some decisions early game. Strafe for manpower. Maybe you don't have much munitions. We're going to go for sweepers. Whatever. The rate at which this repairs is actually very impressive now. So makes this upgrade quite appealing for only 40 munitions. The training center, now available immediately at the start of the game, does not need to be purchased. I think this saves you 125 manpower. And the training center upgrade for infantry, the experience it gives, has been increased from 500 to 800. I think this is enough to give engineers Vet 1 immediately, which is quite strong because that's when they unlock their grenade. So that's one thing to look out for now, like early grenades on these Royal Engineers with the training center upgrade. On top of that, the experience upgrade for medium and heavy vehicles has gone from 500 to 1250. So big boosts to the vet gain from the training center. You just get a massive vet spike thanks to this. And the Vickers heavy machine gun team, its mid-range has been improved by 5%. I'm guessing this is an accuracy, and far range by 7.5%. I think the Vickers maybe need a slight suppression buff, but alright, we'll see how this goes. On to the Air and Sea Battle Group. Commando's Cooked Mills Bomb fuse time decreased from 1.6 to 1, same as US Forces Paratroopers. The Commando LMG section now use unique Lee Enfields that have increased accuracy and damage over the standard infantry section at all ranges, and a 31% increase in lethality short range, 34% at mid range, and 20% at long range on those Lee Enfield rifles. So that's a big buff. Alright, so big showdown DPS comparison here. We've got Vet 3 versus Vet 3 on this side, Vet 0 versus Vet 0 on this side. Let's see how it goes. Stosstruppen versus the new LMG Commandos. Commando's going to have a bit of an edge, they got that ambush bonus right at the start, which might not always happen in game, but it's more simple to run the test this way, so that's why I'm doing it. So here are the results. At Vet 0, the Stosstruppen always won, whereas at Vet 3 versus Vet 3, 2 for the Stos, 1 but with 2 models left for the Commandos. And this is, pre-infantry center training upgrades as well. So in-game, I imagine you probably want to go for that if you're going for 1 or 2 squads of LMG Commandos. So they'll probably swing the Vet 3 even more in favor of the Commandos. And now point blank between Stos and LMG Commandos. Let's see how this one goes. time because it starts at point blank. They don't get their ambush bonus, it looks like. So it looks like the Vet 0 goes very similar to the Vet 1, but now the Vet 3 v Vet 3, the Stosstruppen always went up close. So it looks like with LMG Commandos, you typically want to be fighting longer range against these Stos in cover if possible. Give more time for the, I think the Vickers K, is it? Is maybe a little bit better than the Stosstruppen's LMG. So as the fights start to, go on, drag on, that's where the Vickers K starts to take over. So now testing this, I do have the infantry training upgrade completed. So let's see how the Stosstruppen do against the LMG Commandos now with the upgrade. Both close and short range. Okay, well that did make the fights a lot more close overall. Unfortunately, I made a slight mistake in setting these guys up too close to each other, but Commandos 1-1, Stos 1-2, and then the leftover Stos 1 against the Commando. But yeah, ended up this LMG Commando just able to win here, and narrow wins for the Stos. So the infantry training center seems to maybe make them pretty much even in performance. Maybe the LMG Commando is ever so slightly weaker. The incendiary carpet bombing run now drops 2 additional bombs per bomber, and bombs will now fill the entire reticule properly, similar to the carpet bombing for US forces. It's having a munitions cost increase though, from 110 to 150. I think these do come in quite slowly, again, makes them quite easy to dodge. Naval Blockade has a command point cost decrease from 2 to 1, which I think brings it on par with Supply Surplus in terms of command points. I think most people weren't picking Naval Blockade just because they're trying to get down the tree faster, and they'd go for Supply Surplus instead, even though they were never planning to use this. But now with a cost decrease, it'll make it much more appealing to just go down that side with the same costs. I think still, in terms of 1v1, I believe this costs 80 munitions, and I don't think it's really worth it for the effects, but for team games where you can block capping and potentially block resources from 4 players instead of just 1, I think that's where this ability starts to make a lot more sense in those bigger team modes. It's one of those abilities that just doesn't really scale between the different modes. Supply Surplus, the other side of the tree, now gives a 25% discount on built-in resource caches. I'm guessing this is construct if you build them with low engineers instead of just like auto-clicking them. Not entirely sure, it's worded quite confusingly. But the field infirmaries cost has also been decreased from 200 manpower to 150. I think that's fair enough. Very hard to get these field infirmaries, so you can only plant them on those strategic points, the ones that give you manpower. So not too many places you can actually plant them. Very limited in their effect because of that. So the fact that they can now be 150 manpower, I actually find opportunities to go for them. And they can be pretty powerful, forward reinforce, good rate of healing from them. Good substitute for the CMP truck now. Just looking for some clarification on this. We've got the resource cache 200 manpower. And we're going to go supply surplus.
Resource caches will yield a surplus
150.
We should construct them in the field.
150. So yeah, it doesn't matter what you build it with. Either you auto build it or build it with your engineers. It's got the same 150 cost. So why would you build it with your engineers when you can do it automatically? And finally, the Afrika Korps Notes. DAC are receiving adjustments to address key weaknesses in early game options. This is meant to open options for different styles of play. So the 8-rad, massive crutch for Afrika Korps at the moment, is getting nerfed. The scatter angle and scatter max have both been nerfed. So this will make it quite a lot less potent against infantry. Kind of hard to demonstrate at this stage though because it is bugged. It's kind of firing like maybe twice as fast as it should be or something. Something funky is going on, so it still hasn't been hotfixed yet. The 250 light carrier cost decreased from 280 to 260 manpower and now gains shared veterancy. So I think this is probably fair enough overall. If you're building a 250 manually instead of just getting one from the call-in, was maybe a touch expensive. Makes it a bit more viable against like a strong US forces start. Typically you don't see that much 250 usage against Brits since they can either go for like AT rifles or the Dingo, which shut them down pretty hard. But yeah, we'll kind of bolster up DAC, I think, against US forces. Armored reserves cost decreased from 200 manpower and 150 fuel to 100 manpower and 75 fuel. Now requires only the Panzerarmee Command to be purchased, and Tiger fuel cost increased from 180 fuel to 240 fuel. So yeah, I think this is good overall because previous to this, like you could just forget about going for the double Stug call-in or the Panzer IV call-in because it just didn't make any sense. So expensive to side tech into this. But now it's actually somewhat affordable. First time I was playing Afrika Korps post-patch, I was doing like Gustatori strats and then stalling to the Panzer IV call-in. And it was serviceable at least. Don't think it was good, but I was getting by with it. So it makes a big difference, this rework. And then, yeah, the Tiger getting a cost increase. Overall, opens up these armor reserves so much more. I think this is a really good change. Assault Grenadiers grenade assault costs decreased from 45 to 35 munitions. I think this makes sense. I mean, the Gurkha's grenade assault costs 35 munitions. And it's literally like twice as strong as the Assault Grenadier one. So they were kind of languishing with such a lackluster grenade assault for so expensive. I think this is a good idea. The combined arms ability now triggers on the 250 mortar half-track, 254 Recon tractor, and the walking Stuka. Not a big deal. Most of these are generally like backline units, but nice little touch. The Flak 36 anti-tank gun team, fire aim time increased from 0.125 to 1. Ready aim time from 0.125 to, I guess that's the decimals on the wrong side here, but 0.25 to 0.5. And then reload time increased as well by about 0.5 of a second. Was anybody really asking for nerfs to this? This seems like a very strange change to me. You know, I've tried to go for Flak 36s quite often in my games, and they really work out. And I imagine, you know, in team games they could be pretty strong, but in team games you're also going to have much easier access to artillery to knock them out. So this seems like a uncalled for change to the 88. It's very, very strange. Now, one of the biggest issues I used to have with the 88 is that, you know, you reverse into battle first off. Important because that way the gun's facing the right direction to start. And if you want to make a faster getaway as well, you know, it'll be hitched up the right way. You'll be able to jump it back onto your transport and drive away faster. So it's important. You always want to reverse into action. But then you'd hit unload. They go through the process, they set up, but then it wouldn't be on prioritized vehicles, so it would waste a shot. Shooting a squad of infantry, reveal its position, you'd lose the element of surprise, and then, you know, you wouldn't be shooting at vehicles, GG. Your 88 positioning will be completely worthless. But now, look at this. Starts on prioritized vehicles. Oof, so good. Thank you so much. I don't think this was mentioned anywhere in the patch notes or anything, so yeah, that change, that absolute godsend for the 88. But you can see there's still some funky stuff going on, you know. I'm trying to like, trying to hitch the weapon up again, but maybe there's some bugs with it. It's behaving very strangely. I don't know if this is like a side effect of the pathfinding changes or what, but there's something funky going on. It's making it, at least in cheap mods, very hard for me to hitch this back up. So now it's just completely stuck. Like, I think this happens for about 20 seconds. There it goes, finally. So there's something going on with the hitch up process now, which I don't really recall. Like, sometimes it could be a bit of a palaver, but yeah, as you can see here, there's something funky going on, making it very hard to hitch this up. But here it goes now, finally. I don't really recall this being an issue before this patch. And the flak feeling half-track, similar to other anti-air sources, having its anti-air performance nerfed, and the weapon range has been increased actually up to 45, same as a heavy machine gun. It's actually pretty good. Overall, I think the flak is kind of teetering on the edge of viability, and this change we're going to nudge it in the right direction. The LMG Barrage recharge time from 30 to 20 seconds, already covered that. Marder accuracy reduced by 12%, already covered that. Panzergrenadiers will now be more powerful without combined arms while retaining the same overall strength. This was to help address the significant difference in viability of the unit in small versus large games, while still incentivizing combined arms play. So I already covered this slightly, but base lethality mid to long range increased by 10%. LMG increased by 10%, and then combined arms reduced from 30% to 20%. Checking out the DPS curves of Panzergrenadiers up against Riflemen, and you can see at the start of the game, Riflemen are just better at all ranges. Without the combined arms bonus, the Panzergrenadiers don't really stand a chance. On top of that, Riflemen have 100 extra health as well, so really struggle streak for the P-Greens at the start of the game without the combined arms buff. But then late game, now the Panzergrenadiers upgraded to 6-man, they got their LMG compared to double bar Riflemen with no other upgrades. Now the Riflemen win, but then, about 25 range is kind of the changeover point, and from there the Panzergrenadiers LMG starts to take control. So you could imagine with a 20% accuracy bonus on top of this, the Panzergrenadiers then actually do very well against the Riflemen. The Riflemen may have to rely on either the infantry health upgrade from the ASC or the cost reduction and cheaper reinforcement costs, stuff like that, to help them overcome the P-Greens over the course of like a long battle. The Stuka 3 already covered this with Wehrmacht. Burst length duration nerfed, and accuracy long range also nerfed. Tiger S-mine launcher now deals significantly less damage to infantry, but will now suppress and pin them. Having a look at the revised S-mine launchers on the Tiger now, the Vet 1 ability of the Tiger.
Come on, crew! We have a reputation to earn!
And that's it. Unless I'm doing something wrong here. Fires one thing, suppresses all nearby infantry, does almost 0 damage. 25 damage to like 2 models. Really just shocking in terms of damage. So basically only useful for suppression value. And 50 munitions? I don't know. This seems kind of trash now. I feel like no good. Also specifically says in the direction, deals high damage to nearby infantry. That is a bold-faced lie now. They definitely need to change that piece of text. Yeah, I'm not impressed. I think the S-mine launcher's pretty weak now, I'd say, honestly, at that munitions cost. Maybe at like 30 I could excuse it, but 50, terrible. I also tested the range on this ability. Seems to be extremely short range. Like it's from here to here. If I was even slightly behind this line, these units wouldn't get damaged or suppressed. So very short range on the S-mine launcher as well, making it even less appealing. And the walking Stuka rocket launcher, rockets now deal 40% deflection damage, similar to the Wizzbang, which deals 50%. Walking Stuka was already doing quite a lot to vehicles before this, so this could be really potent now. Let's see how the walking Stuka does against vehicles now. I've got a Matilda here and a Grant here. Got vision the entire time, so probably got a better scatter than normal. Okay, so they landed in a circle around the tank both times. It looks like. Let's try that once more. Oh, there it goes. I feel like we pretty much only got a direct hit from the rockets once on both those barrages, so don't rely on it killing a vehicle. Firing at normal ranges, the scat is going to be too unreliable for that, but if it lands a shot, oof, it can do a huge portion of damage. Italian infantry battle group booby traps increased health on the booby trap now from 20 to 140, so previously you could pretty much attack round them off with anything. Now it'll actually require quite an effort. In fact, even like a stray tank shot typically does 120 damage, so they won't be going off. You need to like attack around them twice perhaps. And now it uses the demo charge model. Basically nobody's been using booby traps since all the nerfs to them, so this is probably just fine. Gustatori reinforcement costs from 40 to 35. I'm a big fan of this change. I think they were completely worthless with 40 manpower per model. And the SMG moving burst length from 35 to 100%. So the first time I played Afrika Korps, I was going for like a double Gustatori strat, and it seemed to be just about viable. Yeah, they could kind of hold their own against Riflemen. I was also getting the upgrade on them, which gives them better received accuracy from the armory. And yeah, they could kind of go all right on the right maps and the right situations. They're okay. So yeah, happy to see Gustatori being somewhat viable once again. The Italian Combined Arms Battle Group, Semovente Assault gun, barrage recharge time decreased, in fact halved, from 90 to 45 seconds. Reload also decreased, so the shells were coming in more rapidly on the barrage. And the ready aim delay on the heat shell has been removed, so less of a delay when you activate that ability. Hasn't seen much play the Semovente. It's decent, but has to compete with the Braiders down the other side of the tech tree, so that's tough. So I think that's mainly the reason why we don't see it too often. And, you know, you typically have access to like the Marder, which kind of fills a pretty similar role overall, so it's hard to find some breathing room, but by buffing up the barrage, that's one thing the Marder doesn't have, so it kind of separates it between the two vehicles. Let's check out the revised Semovente Barrage ability, doing a pretty much max range against the machine gun. Let's see how it goes. It's got an unusual explosion sound to it, doesn't it? Respectable. Kind of reminds me of like the old Zis barrage, you know? After all the nerfs it got. Respectable, and it's free, so yeah, it's reasonable. And the strafing run, bonus damage to vehicles decreased by 25%, and damage increased from 10 to 15. So wow, it's much stronger strafe now. Let's try out this revised strafing run in the Italian Combined Arms Commando. I think previously it was a little bit weak, honestly. And 120 munitions. I think the other ones for USF Special Operations is only 100. So it's a little bit of a price premium. We'll see how it goes against line infantry first, then we'll do it against a tank, Sherman. Okay, against infantry, maybe not the best. Try to get the tank front line up. 300 damage to the Sherman. Still seems to be a step behind the American one in terms of like anti-infantry damage. And the tank damage, it's something, but it's not like lethal. It's not anywhere near the Rocket P47. So it's respectable now, but it's certainly not that impressive. I'd probably still be trying to save munitions for artillery cover instead. And finally, the Armoured Support Battle Group, Vehicle Awareness, command point cost increased from 1 to 2. I mean, yeah, this ability is, I just don't like it at all, really. Just permanent detection, as long as your vehicle just has to stop. Even with the command point increases, it's not really, I mean, it's fine. It's going in the right direction, but these map hack abilities, you know, there's a reason why they got removed from Code 2, and they're just so easy to use in Code 3, and they cover such a huge area of the map. It means you can never like sneak up on your opponent. I really wish these abilities would have a complete overhaul. Now covering a few of the most important bug fixes. The Brumbear's sight decreased from 50 to 35 as intended. The Afrika Korps 88, when you recrew it, we're using a different crew. I think this was causing it to only go up to 4 models instead of 6 when you recruit it, so that has been fixed. Good to see. The precision shot and precision barrage were affected by Indian artillery saturation ability, so kind of sad for me. I used to like doing this, you know, going for like triple shots on the BL 5.5 with the saturation, but that's gone now. Apparently the Stosstruppen's shock assault bonuses were not stacking with other bonuses such as veterancy, so that's been fixed now, making Stosstruppen a bit more appealing. Team weapons could get destroyed when receiving explosive damage in a structure. I remember seeing some funny circumstances around this previously, so good that that has been addressed. Hotkey fix for the mortar half-tracks, smoke barrage and self-repair abilities, so good to see that being addressed. And this is the big bug fix of the patch. Already covered it slightly here and there, but the received accuracy bonus from Training Center would not apply to reinforced infantry entities. This will make this way more appealing going forwards. They fixed an issue where mortar crews would sometimes get stuck on setup. I had had this happen to me a couple times in the past. Very frustrating, so good to see that's been addressed. The M3 Grunt medium tank prioritized vehicle ability now functions correctly. I think previous to this, there was a problem because the big cannon on the front would respect prioritized vehicles, but the pea shooter that could spin would just shoot at whatever. So now hopefully both of the guns are on the same page. Smoke clouds deployed by a player no longer trigger mines. Nice to see. That's it. Thanks to the Patreon lads. See ya.